This is the White Coat Investor Podcast, Milestones to Millionaire, celebrating stories of success along the journey to financial freedom.
This is Milestones to Millionaire, podcast number 239. A professor and a dentist become multimillionaires. This podcast is sponsored by Bob Baiani at Protuity. He's an independent provider of disability insurance planning solutions to the medical community in every state and a longtime White Coat Investor sponsor. He specializes in working with residents and fellows early in their careers to set up sound financial and insurance strategies. If you need to review your disability insurance coverage or to get this critical insurance in place, contact Bob at www.whitecoatinvestor.com/protuity, Protuity. Or you can email info@protuity.com, or you can just pick up your phone and call 973-771-9100. Disability insurance. If you don't have it and you are depending on your income, you need it. Get it in place today. All right. Don't forget, if you have interest in real estate investment, particularly if you are interested in investing passively in real estate, check out our opportunities list. This is a list where we introduce you to companies, mostly fund providers, private fund providers that offer real estate investments. And this might be on the debt side, it might be on the equity side, whatever. There's a bunch of different options there. We have a turnkey provider on there. Lots of different ways you can invest in real estate. You can find all that at whitecoatinvestor.com/RE opportunities. But this is the Milestones to Millionaire podcast. This podcast is driven by you. And we like to feature you and your successes on this podcast. We can use them to inspire others to do the same. But stick around after this interview. We've got a great interview today, but stick around afterward. We're going to talk for a few minutes about the concept of waterfalls. Our guest today on the Milestones to Millionaire podcast is Matt. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us what you do for a living, what part of the country you're in, and how far you are away from your schooling.
I am in Pennsylvania. I'm 10 years out of graduate school, and I am a professor teaching chemistry at a small liberal arts college.
Very cool. I don't know that we've had a professor on here before, and this is episode 239, so it's pretty great to have you. As a lot of people know, there's a lot of doctors that listen to this podcast, but it's far from everybody. It's only about 75% of our audience is doctors. So that leaves 25% that is something else, and you are part of that something else. So welcome. And this message is for everybody else out there that is not a physician. You're welcome on this podcast too, right? So just by way of introduction there. All right. Tell us what milestone you've accomplished that we're celebrating with you today.
My wife and I have $1 million invested.
Wow. I mean, that's even better than being a millionaire, right? That's a million in investable assets. And when did you realize this?
About 2 months ago.
Very cool. Is this something you track regularly, or you just happen to add it up and realize you were there?
We track monthly. So my wife and I have monthly date nights where we go over finances and sort of our goals.
Sounds like a wonderful date.
It took a little while to get her into it, but now that we're millionaires, it's much easier to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to talk about. Very cool. Okay, well, let's get into the deets a little bit here. Tell us a little bit about your household income over the last 10 years.
Sure. So my wife actually is a dentist, so we're part of the White Coat Investors, I guess, in that sense. But she's also about 10 years out of school, and right now we make about 400 combined.
Okay.
But she owns her own practice, and so that has drastically increed our wealth in the past couple of years.
I'm sure, but I'll bet it also increased your debt dramatically, didn't it?
That it did too.
What was the lowest your net worth ever was?
Right out of school, it was negative 250.
And then did she take out a practice loan right out of school, or
no?
Was that
she
years
was
later?
An associate until 3 years ago. So she was an associate for the first 7 years.
Okay. And how far did she get into her student loans as an associate?
She paid off actually, we just paid off her student loans earlier this year.
Okay.
They were federalized. Yeah. So they were
not being an associate.
They were on pause during the pandemic, so we didn't pay any off, and we actually saved up to buy the practice at that point when we weren't paying on the student loans.
Okay. Tell us about your career pathway.
So I did a postdoc after I got my PhD, and then immediately went into the job market and got my job. This is my 11th year teaching.
Same place.
Yep.
And what do chemistry professors make these days?
I make about 70,000.
Okay. So certainly not the same as what a doc who owns her own practice is making.
That is very true. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you said, what do you think you averaged over those 10 years as far as income?
Probably around 250,
250
300.
or so. Okay. Well, tell us about your, have you added up your net worth as well? I mean, we know you have $1 million in liquid assets, but what's your net worth total, do you think?
It's about 2 million.
About 2 million. Tell us what that's composed of.
Yeah. So we have the $1 million invested. We have a fully paid off house worth about 400,000. And then we have her practice, which her equity is probably a little over $500,000. And then we own the building that she practices in. That's worth about 400,000. And then we have a rental property worth about 200.
Okay. This is a little bit of an interesting lineup for your debts, right? You said the house is paid for that you're living in.
Yep.
But there's debt on the practice.
Yes.
Is there debt on the building the practice is in as well?
Yes.
And what about the rental property?
That there's a little bit left, but we're hoping to pay that off next year.
You seem fairly anti-debt.
Yes.
10 years out of school and your home's already paid for. When did you pay for that?
We paid that off in 2018.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Why was that such a priority for you, and how did you pay that off so quickly?
It was mostly a priority because that was in both of our names, and the student loans was all in my wife's. So we prioritized paying that off rather than the student loans, mostly as a hedge against something happening to her. And then
you figured no one was going to, come and foreclose on her brain, but at least you'd have a roof over your head if something happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point we had 3 kids. And so it was sort of stabilizing the home life versus anything else. Because as she's sort of the big breadwinner in our household, if something did happen to her, our income would go down pretty drastically.
Yeah. How many kids now?
Still 3.
Okay. So how did you balance being financially successful with raising 3 kids?
It was a challenge at first when she did a residency for a year, a general practice residency, and she only made $50,000 at that point, and that's when we had our 3rd kid. So at that point, we were making a little over $100,000. We had 3 kids, all under the age of 5, and it was stressful. But we started having our monthly date nights to just talk about, if we have any extra cash coming in, what are we going to do with it? And, once we paid off the house, then things really started to really balloon for us.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, as income goes up, as debt goes away, of course, the money has to go somewhere. And it sounds like for you, it went into investments. So tell me about how you guys invest.
So we both max out our retirement plans, and then we both have 401ks. And then through her office, she does profit sharing, which allows her to sock away about $65,000 a year. And then we both do backdoor Roths, and then we have a brokerage account that we stick some money in every month as well.
So a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it sounds like mostly, publicly traded securities, mutual funds. Is that what you're invested in?
Yeah, pretty much all index funds.
Okay, very cool. All right. Well, tell us about, the biggest money disagreement you had. You said that it took a little while to get used to having monthly money meetings. What was the biggest disagreement you ever had?
I think when we started to have a surplus, it was, what do we do with it? And for a while, we were, splitting a little bit onto paying down the house versus paying off student loans versus investing. And at some point, we decided we just need to pick one goal and focus on it. And so that became the house until we paid that off. And then it became, okay, let's buy a rental property. And so we bought our first rental not long after we paid off the house. So it was really just figuring out how we wanted to allocate the next dollar. And then once we sort of came up with a plan, then it's gone pretty smoothly since then.
Yeah, it's one of the hard things. You come out of school, you come out of training, whatever. You got 12 good uses for money and only enough money for 4 of them.
Yeah,
You got to
exactly.
choose which ones to do. The fun part, though, is now, if you look back on those 12 things you had to do with money, you've only got 2 or 3 of them left. So
Yes.
the decision is dramatically easier a decade later, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's much more
Okay.
fun to talk about these things than it was those things.
Yeah, investing is way sexier than debt for sure.
Yeah.
Ah, very cool. So, I mean, what's your secret to success? There's somebody out there like you, right? 10 years ago, married to a dentist, married to a physician, whatever, trying to combine your finances, start working together toward financial goals. And they're going, man, I'd like to be, a multimillionaire in 10 years. What advice would you give to them? How'd you do this?
I would say first having these monthly meetings has been really helpful, discussing how we want to allocate that next dollar. And then we've always automated our savings. So it's always coming out of the paycheck before we see it. So our retirement funds, our brokerage account, that's all coming out before it hits our bank account. And so that we're always trying to pay ourselves first.
Very cool. And that way, you're going to have some savings, and you just got to be frugal on the backside, I suppose.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest splurge in the last couple of years?
We started traveling a lot more. So we took a Mediterranean cruise last year. We went to France earlier this year. We've been to Mexico and Canada in the last couple of years with our girls. So really travel.
Very cool. So you're not supposed to live like a resident for half your career. Is that right?
That is right.
Thanks for that. Every now and then people here live like a resident. They assume I want them to do that until they're financially independent. But really, it's just the idea of front loading some of your financial tasks like you guys did. And then the truth is, when the kids are young anyway, they're not going to remember those trips. So, might as well, once they get to be a little bit older, to take those opportunities. Very cool. What's next for you guys?
Well, we're going to pay off our rental within the next year and then probably try and look to invest in more real estate.
Very cool. So you got a goal to be a landlord of a little real estate empire. How many doors do you anticipate you're gonna build into this empire?
I mean, we'd like to have 3. That way we could have 1 for each of our kids.
Uh-huh.
But we'll see if we go beyond that.
Very cool. Is your area getting like mine, where you look around and you wonder how your kids are ever going to be able to afford to buy a house in your area?
Yeah. I mean, our house has doubled in value in the past 10 years.
Yeah, I know how that feels for sure. Well, very cool. Congratulations, Matt. You have done awesome. You and your spouse have done awesome, and your kids. You guys have all, it's a team effort. You put it all together. You've managed money well. You've increased your income. You've taken care of your debt. You should be very proud of yourselves. I know others will find this very inspirational to see that, hey, they're no different than we were. And if they can do it, we can do it. So thanks so much for being willing to come on the Milestones Millionaire podcast.
Been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, another great interview. The thing I love about these interviews is, in some ways, they're all the same, right? Because the pathway to success, for the most part, looks the same for everybody. You decided you were going to take control of things. You became financially literate. You carved out some significant chunk of your income and used it to build wealth. Now, it's a different order what people do. Sometimes people pay down one debt before another, or they invest more instead of paying down debt, or they pay down debt more instead of invest, whatever. But you give it a few years of deliberately working to build wealth, and you get there. You become a millionaire. You become a multimillionaire. You become financially independent. And before long, money is no longer a significant factor in how you live your life. It's way beyond not worrying about money. It's just not a factor anymore. And it's a beautiful place to be. And it's a place where I think you can not only be the most present partner and parent, but you can be the best doc you can be, because you're no longer focused on what a procedure or a clinical day is going to pay you. You're focused on the person sitting in that seat or lying in that bed that needs your care. Now, I just think you become a better doctor when you're not as worried about money. So that's a pretty wonderful thing. Now, I told you we were going to talk a little bit about the concept of waterfalls. And when we talk about waterfalls in the personal finance and investing space, we're talking about this concept that you only have a certain amount of money. So what you do is you pour it like water into the top waterfall, and that pool is full, it spills over into the next pool and into the next pool once that pool's full, and into the next pool. And you might get down 5, 6, 7 pools, whatever. And then you run out of money. Okay. And what that waterfall represents is the best uses for your money. And that might be paying on a debt. It might be maxing out some type of a retirement account. For example, a waterfall that we've put together to help people decide what to do next, because it's hard in the beginning, right? This is all kind of new to you, and you got 12 great uses for money, and you're like, how do I prioritize these? But here's one way you can prioritize these, and we call it the waterfall of tax efficient investing. And that first pool is your employer provided retirement plan match, right? The match is free money. If you just save something for retirement, you get paid more by your employer. Maybe it's 50% of the first 6% of your salary that you put into that account. That's your first priority, because not getting it is leaving part of your salary on the table. So you put enough money, enough water into that pool so you get the full match from the employer. Then it spills over into the next pool. And the next pool should be high interest rate debt, right? Now, what's high? Well, probably more than 6%, maybe more than 8%. Certainly any sort of credit card debt at 15 or 30% is in that category, right? This is a high priority. Your guaranteed investments out there are paying you something like 4 or 4.5% these days, right? So if you can get a guaranteed return from paying down an 8% debt, that's pretty attractive. Yeah, you might do a little better than that if you have a particularly good real estate investment, or maybe stocks have a good year. Maybe you can borrow at 8% and come out ahead investing. But for the most part, when you get into those higher interest rate debts, it's a pretty good option. So we have that as our second pool. The third pool, I would put a health savings account. It's one of the major priorities for us every year because it's triple tax free. You get a tax break when the money goes in, it grows tax free. When it comes out and is spent on healthcare, it comes out tax free. It's triple tax free. It's a really, really tax advantaged account. And so that one really comes next. Okay. And then next, in the waterfall, once you've filled that out, right, you got your match, you paid off all your high interest rate debt, you now maxed out your HSA for the year. Well, that's probably where your retirement account comes, and maybe it's a solo 401k if you're self-employed. Maybe it's a 403b, if you're at a academic center, whatever. But you max that out next. It might be $23,500 this year. Still got more money you can put away toward building wealth? Well, that's where we start looking at a backdoor Roth, both for yourself and for your spouse. If you're under 50, that's $7,000 this year for each of you. Right? Still got more? Well, you can always invest more in taxable, right? And that pool actually never ends, right? Because you could put $10 million a year into a taxable brokerage account if you wanted to. But sometimes people put a limit on that and they say, I want to invest this much into, index funds in a taxable account, and then we're going to stop doing this, and I'm going to go buy a rental property, some sort of alternative investment, or I want to put $10,000 into Bitcoin if I can, or whatever, right? You get to design this waterfall yourself, and at this point, you can pick anything you want. Other people, they're very debt averse, and they're going to put even low interest rate debt into the waterfall at about that point. I know we didn't really have much of a taxable brokerage account until we'd paid off our mortgage. It was important to us to pay off a mortgage. And so before we had much of a taxable brokerage account, we actually dedicated money toward paying off the mortgage. And then, of course, that allows you down the road to invest even more into a taxable brokerage account. But that's the concept of a waterfall, right? You're moving from one pool to another. You are, engaging with your financial priorities in the order in which you have prioritized them. Right? Your money is going toward what you value the most. And I think that intentionality is really valuable. And the concept is helpful for those of you that are early in career and you've got these dozen things that are good to do with your money. Maybe it's beefing up your emergency fund and paying off this debt and that debt and this debt. And you got all these new retirement accounts you want to take advantage of. And, maybe you want to be a landlord. And so you want to do some of that. And you want to take your kids to Europe or whatever. You got all these priorities. Well, you got to list them out in the order in which you care about them most and start addressing them, start working down them. And you will find, like Matt found, as you go through that first decade or so of your career and your financial life, that some of those start going away, right? You pay off the debts or you no longer have whatever that priority was. And pretty soon, instead of working with a dozen of them, you're only working with 3 of them. And your life actually becomes a lot more simple. This episode was sponsored by Bob Bayani at Protuity. One listener sent us this review. Bob had been absolutely terrific to work with. He's always quickly and clearly communicated with me by both email and or telephone, with responses to my inquiries usually coming the same day. I have somewhat of a unique situation, and Bob has been able to help explain the implications and underwriting process in a clear and professional manner. You can contact Bob at whitecoatinvestor.com/protuity. You can email info@protuity.com, or you can call 973-771-9100 to get disability insurance in place today. If you'd like to be on this podcast, you can apply. whitecoatinvestor.com/milestones is where you do that. Until our next episode, which will drop this Thursday, an episode of the regular White Coat Investor podcast. Keep your head up and shoulders back. We'll see you next time.
The hosts of the White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.